I, 26F, stood at the altar, my hand in his. The man I loved, Mark, was about to become my husband. The church was filled with flowers. Everyone we knew was watching us. My dress was perfect. My heart was full. I thought this was the happiest day of my life. The minister was saying the words that would join us together forever. I looked at Mark, and he looked at me. He smiled, a big, bright smile that I had fallen in love with. He leaned in close, as if to tell me a secret. I thought he was going to say something sweet, something romantic. I leaned my head toward him, waiting for the words. He whispered in my ear. His voice was low, so only I could hear. Your family's money is finally mine. The words hit me like a stone. I felt my breath catch in my chest. For a second, I thought I had heard him wrong. It could not be real. This was a joke. It had to be a very bad joke. I pulled back a little to look at his face. The smile was still there. But now it looked different. It looked cold. It looked like the smile of a winner, not a husband. My own smile froze on my face. My mind went completely blank. I could still hear the minister talking, but the words were just sounds. They had no meaning. I felt a wave of sickness wash over me. My hands started to feel clammy inside my gloves. My whole body felt cold. Was this really happening? Was the man I was marrying, the man I had trusted with my whole heart, just a liar? A thief? He had played me. He had played my entire family. The love I felt for him just moments ago curdled into something ugly and dark. It was a feeling of deep, shocking betrayal. I felt like a fool. A stupid, naive fool who had fallen for a perfect act. I looked out at the guests. My mother was crying happy tears in the front row. My friends were beaming at me. They all thought this was a fairy tale. And then my eyes found my father. He was sitting next to my mother, looking straight at me. He was not smiling like everyone else. He had a very calm, very steady look on his face. As my eyes met his, a small, knowing smile touched the corners of his lips. It was not a happy smile. It was a smile that said, I know. It was a smile that said, just wait. That single look from my father cut through my panic. It was a lifeline. It told me I was not alone in this nightmare. It told me that something was already in motion. The sickness in my stomach did not go away, but a new feeling started to grow alongside it. It was a cold, hard resolve. I would not fall apart. I would not cause a scene. I would go through with this. I would say I do. And then I would find out what that smile on my father's face really meant. Mark thought he had won. He thought the game was over. I suddenly understood that for me, the game was just beginning. The minister prompted me for my vows. My voice came out, surprisingly steady. I said the words. I promised to love, honor, and cherish. Each word felt like a lie, a heavy weight in my mouth. But I said them. I looked Mark in the eyes as I did. I let him see the loving bride he expected to see. I did not let the truth show on my face. Inside, I was making a different vow. I was promising myself that I would make him regret the words he had whispered to me. He had no idea who he had just married. He had no idea what my family was capable of. We were pronounced husband and wife. He kissed me. His lips were warm, but the kiss felt like ice. The crowd cheered. They threw rice as we walked down the aisle. Mark held my hand up high, like a trophy. I smiled for the cameras. I smiled for my friends. I smiled for my family. But my smile was a mask. Underneath it, my mind was racing. I had to stay calm. I had to act normal. I had to get through the reception. I needed to talk to my father. I needed to understand his plan. Mark thought he had married a sweet, trusting girl. He was about to find out he had married her father's daughter. The reception was a blur of congratulations and champagne. People kept coming up to us, telling us how happy they were for us. I thanked them all. I hugged them. I played the part of the joyful bride. Mark was in his element. He was charming. He was laughing. He worked the room like a politician, shaking hands with my father's business partners, clapping men on the back. He looked so comfortable, so entitled. He already acted like he owned the place. He refilled his champagne glass again and again. His confidence was disgusting. I watched him from across the room. He was talking to his mother, a woman who had always been a little too sweet to me. Her name was Janice. She clutched his arm, a proud look on her face. I saw him lean in and say something to her. She laughed, a sharp, unpleasant sound. They looked like partners in crime, celebrating a successful heist. My blood ran cold. She was in on it. Of course she was. She had raised him. This was her victory, too. I felt a surge of anger so strong it almost made me dizzy. I had to get away for a moment. I needed to breathe. I excused myself, saying I needed to fix my makeup. I went to the ladies' room and locked the door behind me. I leaned against the cool marble counter and took a deep breath. I looked at my reflection in the mirror. The woman looking back at me was wearing a white dress and a veil, but her eyes were hard. The shock was wearing off, and what was left was pure, cold fury. How could I have been so blind? I thought back over our entire relationship. The whirlwind romance, the constant compliments, the way he always seemed to need help, but in a way that made me feel strong and capable. It was all an act, every single moment. I remembered how he told me he loved me for me, not for my family's name. He said it was a burden he was willing to share. He made me feel seen. He made me feel special. Now I saw it all for what it was. A carefully constructed lie. He had studied me. He knew exactly what I wanted to hear. And I had believed every word. The shame was a bitter taste in my mouth. But shame would not help me now. I pushed it down. I would deal with that later. Right now, I needed a plan. My father was my key. His smile was my only hope. I fixed my lipstick, smoothed my dress, and put the mask back on. I walked back out into the party, my head held high. I found my father standing near the large windows, looking out at the gardens. He was alone for a moment. This was my chance. I walked over to him. "Dad," I said softly. He turned to me. The knowing look was still in his eyes. "Are you all right, sweetheart?" he asked. His voice was calm and gentle, but there was a strength underneath it that I clung to. "No," I whispered. "Dad, at the altar." He said, I could not bring myself to repeat the words. They were too ugly. My father's face hardened. He nodded slowly. "I know what he is," he said. "I have known for a while." His words confirmed everything. A wave of relief washed over me, so strong my knees felt weak. I was not going crazy. I was not alone. "You knew?" I asked. "Why did you let this happen? Why did you let me marry him?" "Because this was the only way," he said, his voice low and serious. To let him think he had won. To let him show his true colors so completely that there would be no doubt. "Trust me, sweetheart. We have a plan. Just get through tonight. Get through the honeymoon. Act like the loving wife. Let him feel safe. Let him get comfortable. His greed will make him careless. And when he is at his most confident, we will take everything from him." I looked at my father, really looked at him. I had always known he was a smart man, a powerful man. But in that moment, I saw a side of him I had never seen before. He was a protector. He was ruthless when he needed to be. And he was on my side. All my fear, all my panic, it all melted away and was replaced by a solid core of ice. I understood what he was asking of me. I had to act. I had to pretend to be the happy, clueless bride while gathering the evidence we needed. "What do I need to do?" I asked. "Just watch him," my father said. "Listen to him. Let him talk. He will brag. He will make mistakes. Note everything down. But do not confront him. Not yet. The time for that will come. For now, you're on your honeymoon. Enjoy the sunshine. And let him believe he is the smartest man in the world. I nodded. I could do that. I could play this game. I looked over at my new husband. He was now laughing with a group of my cousins, holding his champagne glass like a king holding a scepter. He looked so smug, so pleased with himself. He had no idea he was a fly who had just flown into a spider's web, a very patient, very wealthy spider. I walked back to Mark's side and slipped my arm through his. He looked down at me and smiled. "There you are, my beautiful wife," he said, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "I am here, my wonderful husband," I said, my voice sweet as honey. I leaned up and kissed his cheek. He thought he was in control. He thought he had all the power. I would let him believe that, for a little while longer. The honeymoon was in 2 days. We were going to a private island. It would be just the two of us. It was the perfect place to let him expose himself. The perfect place to start gathering the proof I needed to destroy him. The rest of the wedding passed in a strange haze. I danced the first dance with Mark. He held me close, whispering more sweet nothings in my ear. They sounded hollow and false now. I just smiled and rested my head on his shoulder, my mind working, planning. I danced with my father. He held me tightly. "You are stronger than you think," he whispered. "You will get through this." I knew he was right. We cut the cake. We threw the bouquet. I did all the things a bride is supposed to do. And through it all, I watched Mark. I saw the way his eyes scanned the room, not looking at me, but at the wealthy guests, the expensive decorations. He was not seeing a wedding. He was seeing a business transaction. He was counting his money. His victory lap had already begun in his mind, and I was just a pretty accessory he'd acquired along the way. Late that night, when the party was finally over, we went to the hotel suite my father had booked for us. It was enormous. There were rose petals on the bed. A bottle of champagne was chilling in an ice bucket. It was supposed to be the most romantic night of my life. Instead, it felt like a prison cell. A very luxurious prison cell. Mark popped the champagne cork with a loud cheer. "To us," he said, handing me a glass. "To our future. We are going to have everything we have ever wanted." I knew he was only talking about himself. I raised my glass. "To us," I echoed. I took a small sip. The bubbles fizzed on my tongue. He, on the other hand, drank his glass in one long gulp and immediately poured another. His composure, so perfect all day, was starting to crack now that we were in private. The charming mask was slipping, revealing the greedy man underneath. "You know," he said, loosening his tie, "your father is a very impressive man. Very powerful. I had a great talk with Mr. Henderson from the board. He seemed very interested in my ideas for the company's expansion." My stomach tightened. He was already trying to insert himself into my father's business. "My father handles the business, Mark," I said, keeping my voice light. "You do not need to worry about that." He laughed, a dismissive sound. "Oh, I am not worried, my love. I am excited. We are family now. What is his is ours. And I have a lot of ideas that could make him a lot more money." He looked at me, his eyes shining with a strange intensity. "We are going to be a real power couple. You will see." I just smiled. I let him talk. I let him lay out all his grand plans. He talked for over an hour about the changes he was going to make, the people he was going to fire, the new departments he was going to create. He spoke as if he were already the CEO. It was sickening. But it was also exactly what my father had predicted. His greed was making him careless. I did not argue. I did not question. I just listened. I filed away every word, every arrogant assumption. This was my new job. I was a spy in my own marriage, and I was going to be very, very good at it. The next 2 days before our honeymoon were a strange sort of limbo. We were staying at the hotel, accepting visits from family who were still in town. Mark played the part of the doting new husband perfectly. He brought me breakfast in bed. He told my relatives how lucky he was. But whenever we were alone, his conversation always turned back to money. He asked detailed questions about my trust fund. He wanted to know the exact structure of my father's companies. He tried to make it sound like he was just curious, just trying to understand my world. But I knew better. He was gathering intelligence. He was mapping out his new kingdom. I gave him vague answers. I pretended to be a little clueless about the details. I played the part of the sheltered rich girl who did not bother with such things. "Oh, I do not know, darling," I would say with a little laugh. "Daddy handles all of that. It is too complicated for me." This seemed to please him. The dumber I appeared, the smarter he clearly felt. He would pat my hand and say, "Do not you worry your pretty little head about it. I will take care of everything from now on." Each time he said it, my resolve hardened. He was underestimating me so profoundly. It was the biggest mistake he would ever make. His mother, Janice, called him constantly. I would hear his side of the conversation. It was always hushed and excited. "Yes, it went perfectly," he would say. "Even better than we planned. No, she has no idea. Soon, Mom. Very soon. Everything we worked for is finally going to pay off." He thought he was being discreet, but the hotel suite was not that big. I heard every word. I wrote them down in a little notebook I kept hidden in my makeup bag. I was building my case, one whispered conversation at a time. Finally, the day of our honeymoon arrived. We flew on a private jet to a small, secluded island in the Caribbean. The resort was beautiful, with white sand beaches and crystal clear water. Our villa was right on the beach, with its own private pool. It was a paradise, but it felt tainted. I could not enjoy the beauty. All I could see was the stage for the next act of this terrible play. Mark was ecstatic. "Look at this place," he said, throwing his arms wide. "This is the life. I could get used to this." He was already acting like this was his normal. He ordered the most expensive things on the menu. He treated the staff with a casual arrogance that made my skin crawl. He was performing the role of a wealthy man, and he was a natural. That first night, after a dinner where he talked nonstop about the yacht he planned to buy, I waited for him to fall asleep. He had drunk a lot of wine, so it did not take long. His breathing became deep and even. I slipped out of bed. My heart was pounding. This was my first real chance to search his things. I started with his laptop, which he had left on the desk. I opened it. It was password protected, of course. I tried a few obvious things. His birthday. His mother's name. Nothing. Then I remembered something. A few weeks before the wedding, I had seen him typing it in. I had only caught a glimpse. It was something to do with a car. He had an old sports car he was obsessed with. A car he had to sell years ago. He always talked about buying it back one day. It was a 1968 Mustang. I tried the password Mustang 68. It worked. The screen opened up. I felt a jolt of adrenaline. I was in. I went straight to his emails. I started with his sent folder. I scrolled back for months. Most of it was boring. Work emails, junk mail. But then I found a folder labeled J. I clicked on it. It was filled with emails to his mother, Janice. The subject lines were things like update, progress, and the final push. My hands were shaking as I opened the first one. The email was from 6 months ago, right after he had proposed to me. It read, "Mom." She said yes. "The plan is working perfectly. She is completely in love, so trusting. It is almost too easy. Once we are married, I will have access to everything. The lawyers say a prenup will be standard, but I have a plan for that too. I will make her feel so guilty about not trusting me that she will insist on not having one. Her father is the only obstacle, but he seems to like me. He is old school. He just wants his daughter to be happy. He has no idea what is coming." I had to stop reading. I felt sick. He had planned to manipulate me out of a prenuptial agreement. And he had succeeded. I had been the one to tell my father we did not need one. I had told him it was unromantic. I had told him I trusted Mark completely. My father had argued, but I had been stubborn. I had insisted, and Mark had used my love and trust against me, just as he had planned. He had played me like a violin. I took a deep breath and kept reading. The emails laid out the entire scheme. He had targeted me specifically. He had researched my family, my friends, my interests. He had created a fake persona, the charming, ambitious man with a bit of bad luck, designed to appeal to my desire to feel needed. He and his mother had been in this together from the very beginning. They talked about our future and the payday. They had a list of things they were going to buy. A new house for her. A new car for him. A life of luxury, all funded by my family. The worst part was how he talked about me. He called me the golden goose, the ticket, and the naive princess. He made fun of things I had said to him in confidence. He mocked my dreams and my insecurities. He saw me as an object, a tool to get what he wanted. There was not a single word of affection, not a hint of genuine feeling. It was all cold, hard calculation. I found another folder labeled Finances. It was full of credit card statements and loan applications. He was in debt. Deep, deep debt. He owed money to at least 5 different credit card companies. He had a personal loan he had defaulted on. The failed business he had told me about was a complete fabrication. He had never owned a business. He had just spent money he did not have, living a lifestyle he could not afford, all while hunting for a rich wife to bail him out. I felt a strange sense of calm settle over me. The hurt was still there, a deep, aching wound. But the anger was sharper now, more focused. This was not just a man who wanted my money. This was a predator, a con artist. And I had everything I needed to prove it. I used my phone to take pictures of every single email, every single statement. I made sure the pictures were clear. Then I sent them to a new, secret email address I had created just for this purpose. I sent a copy to my father's private email as well, with a simple subject line. He is exactly who you thought he was. I closed the laptop and put it back exactly where I found it. I deleted the sent emails from my phone. I cleared my browser history. I left no trace. I slipped back into bed. Mark was still sound asleep, snoring softly. I looked at his face in the moonlight. The face I had once thought was so handsome, so kind. Now it looked like the face of a monster. I lay there for hours, staring at the ceiling, my mind clear and cold as ice. The honeymoon had just begun, and I knew exactly what I was going to do next. The next morning, I woke up before him. I went for a walk on the beach. The sun was just rising, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange. I watched the waves roll in, one after another. I felt a sense of purpose I had not felt before. I was no longer a victim in this story. I was the one setting the trap. When I got back to the villa, Mark was awake. He was sitting on the patio, drinking coffee. "Good morning, beautiful," he said, smiling at me. "Sleep well?" "Like a baby," I lied, smiling back. "It is so peaceful here." "It is it not?" he said, stretching his arms. "I was just thinking. We should look at property here. Maybe buy a little vacation home. A place for us to get away." "That sounds lovely," I said. "But that must be very expensive." He waved his hand dismissively. "Do not worry about money. That is my job now. I am the man of the house. I will provide for us." The sheer audacity of it almost made me laugh. He was going to provide for us with my money. "Whatever you think is best, darling," I said sweetly. I was getting good at this. I could see how easy it was to fool him. He wanted to believe I was this compliant, brainless doll, so that is what I would be. Later that day, we went snorkeling. As we were swimming over a coral reef surrounded by colorful fish, he started talking about business again. "You know," he said, pulling his mask up onto his forehead, "I have been thinking a lot about your father's company. He is too conservative. He is leaving millions on the table. There are international markets he has not even touched. He has been very successful for a very long time, I said carefully. He knows what he is doing. Of course, Mark said quickly. I am not criticizing him. I just see potential, untapped potential. With my vision and his resources, we could double the company's value in 5 years. He was not just after my inheritance. He was after the whole company. He wanted to take over my father's life's work. The arrogance was breathtaking. He truly believed he was smarter than everyone, that he could just walk in and take whatever he wanted. That is very ambitious, I said. I let a little bit of fake admiration creep into my voice. It was all he needed. Ambitious is my middle name, he said, puffing out his chest. You just need to help me, my love. Talk to your father. Tell him he should listen to my ideas. Put in a good word for me. Make him see that I am an asset. I will see what I can do, I promised. I made a mental note of the conversation. I would report it all to my father, every word. Mark was digging his own grave, and he was asking me to hand him the shovel. I was more than happy to oblige. That evening, I got an email back from my father. It was short and to the point. I received the files. The proof is undeniable. Good work. The plan is proceeding. I have engaged a team to handle the next steps. They will be in touch with you. For now, continue your observation. Let him feel like he is making progress. Let him believe you are on his side. We are preparing a welcome home present he will never forget. A new sense of security settled over me. A team. My father was not just sitting back and waiting. He had lawyers, investigators, people who knew how to handle this kind of situation. I felt protected. I felt powerful. Mark thought he was a wolf, but he had wandered into a lion's den, and the lions were getting hungry. I decided to push a little further. I needed more than just emails. I needed to hear it from his own mouth. The next day, as we were lounging by our private pool, I brought up the subject of his past. I did it casually, as if the thought had just occurred to me. You know, darling, I said, you have told me a little about your old business, but I do not really understand what happened. It must have been so difficult for you. I put on my most sympathetic face. He sighed dramatically. It was a nightmare, he said. I had a partner, a man I trusted like a brother. He betrayed me. He embezzled money, ran the company into the ground, and left me holding the bag. I lost everything. He looked so sad, so wounded. It was a masterful performance. That is terrible, I said. What was his name? Your partner? He hesitated for a fraction of a second. I saw it. A tiny flicker of panic in his eyes. He was making it up as he went along. His name was David Chen, he said, a real snake. David Chen, I repeated, committing the fake name to memory. Did you press charges? Did he go to jail? No, he said, shaking his head sadly. He disappeared, fled the country. By the time I realized what had happened, he was long gone. And I had no proof. He was clever. He covered his tracks. I was left with nothing but debt and a broken heart. He reached over and took my hand. But then I met you. You saved me, you know. You made me believe in trust again. It was disgusting. He was using a fabricated story of betrayal to make me feel closer to him, to make me feel like his savior. When all along, he was the snake. He was the one betraying me. I squeezed his hand. I am so glad I found you, I said. My voice was thick with fake emotion. Later that night, I sent another email to my father. I told him the story Mark had just told me. I gave him the fake name, David Chen. I knew my father's team would look into it. And when they found that no such person and no such company had ever existed, it would be another nail in Mark's coffin. The rest of the week passed in a similar fashion. I played the loving, supportive, slightly dim-witted wife. He played the charming, ambitious husband who was eager to take the reins of my family's empire. He was constantly on his phone, making calls. I overheard snippets. He was talking to architects about designing a new house. He was talking to a car dealership about a new Ferrari. He was spending my money before he even had it. He was so confident, so sure of his victory, that he did not even try to hide it anymore. On our last day, he was in a particularly good mood. "This has been the best week of my life," he said, wrapping his arms around me. "And it is just the beginning. When we get home, things are going to change. We are going to start living the life we deserve." "I cannot wait," I said, and for the first time, it was not a complete lie. I could not wait to get home. I could not wait to see the look on his face when his perfect world came crashing down around him. He leaned in to kiss me. I let him. The kiss felt like a prelude to a war he had no idea he was about to lose. The flight home was long. Mark slept for most of it, a contented smile on his face. He was probably dreaming of his new life, his new fortune. I did not sleep. I stayed awake, my mind sharp and clear. I thought about the altar. I thought about his whisper. "Your family's money is finally mine." I thought about my father's smile. I thought about the emails on his laptop. I thought about the lies he had told me by the pool. I pieced it all together, a mosaic of deceit and greed. There was no doubt left. No room for pity. He had done this to himself. He had chosen this path. And I was going to make sure he followed it all the way to the end. When we landed, a car was waiting for us. Not my usual driver, but a man in a black suit I did not recognize. He was holding a sign with my name on it. Mark, however, assumed the car was for him. He strode over to the man confidently. "We are here," he announced, as if the driver worked for him. The driver did not look at Mark. He looked at me. "Ma'am," he said with a respectful nod, "your father sent me. He has asked that you come directly to the main office. He said it is urgent." Mark's smile faltered for a moment. "The office? Now? We just got back." "Yes, sir," the driver said, his tone flat and professional. My instructions were very clear. Directly to the office. Mark looked at me, a question in his eyes. I gave a small, helpless shrug. "Daddy can be very demanding when it comes to business," I said. "It must be important." I made it sound like a normal, if inconvenient, request. He bought it. His confident smile returned. "Of course," he said, puffing out his chest again. "He probably wants to hear my ideas right away. He must have gotten my emails." He had been sending unsolicited strategy memos to my father all week. I knew for a fact that my father had not read a single one. Mark got into the car as if he owned it. He settled into the plush leather seat and sighed contentedly. "This is more like it," he said to me. "No more commercial flights for us, my love." The drive to my father's office building was quiet. Mark was looking out the window, pointing out landmarks, talking about which buildings he thought were ugly and which ones he would buy if he had the chance. He was a king surveying his new territory. I just sat there, my hands folded in my lap, my heart beating a slow, steady rhythm. The time was coming. I could feel it. We arrived at the skyscraper that housed my father's company headquarters. The driver opened the door for me, then for Mark. We walked into the grand lobby. The security guards all knew me. They nodded respectfully. "Welcome back, miss," one of them said. We took the private elevator up to the top floor where my father's office was. The elevator was silent except for the soft hum of the machinery. Mark was fidgeting with his tie, a look of eager anticipation on his face. He thought he was walking into his first day at his new job. He thought he was about to be welcomed into the inner circle. He had no idea he was walking into an execution. The elevator doors opened directly into the reception area of the executive suite. My father's assistant, a woman who had been with him for 30 years, was waiting for us. She gave me a warm smile. "Welcome home," she said. Then she looked at Mark, and her smile vanished. Her expression became cold and professional. "He is waiting for you in the boardroom," she said, her voice clipped. "The boardroom?" Mark said, looking pleased. "A formal meeting. I like it. He is taking me seriously." He was so blind, so wrapped up in his own fantasy that he could not see the warning signs. The cold driver, the frosty assistant, the formal setting. He saw it all as confirmation of his own importance. We walked down the long hallway to the main boardroom. The doors were large and imposing, made of dark, polished wood. The assistant opened one of the doors for us and gestured for us to go inside. I took a deep breath and walked in. Mark followed close behind me, a bounce in his step. The room was large, with a long table in the center. At the head of the table sat my father. He was not alone. On one side of him sat our family lawyer, a man I had known my whole life. On the other side sat a woman in a sharp suit I did not recognize. There were two other men in suits standing against the far wall. They looked like security. And sitting on the other side of the table, looking pale and nervous, was Mark's mother, Janice. Mark stopped dead in his tracks. His confident smile evaporated. He looked from his mother to my father to the lawyers to the security guards. His face went white. The trap had just been sprung. "What is this?" Mark asked, his voice suddenly small. "What is going on? Mom, what are you doing here?" Janice would not look at him. She just stared down at her hands, which were twisting a handkerchief in her lap. My father looked at Mark. His expression was like granite. "Sit down, Mark," he said. His voice was not loud, but it filled the room with a cold, absolute authority. It was the voice he used when a multi-million-dollar deal was about to fall apart. It was a voice that did not tolerate argument. Mark hesitated, then slowly walked to the table and sat down in the chair opposite his mother. I sat down next to my father. I felt a strange sense of detachment, as if I were watching a movie. I was not the scared bride at the altar anymore. I was a spectator at the dismantling of a con man. "We have a few things to discuss," my father said, his eyes fixed on Mark. "It has come to my attention that you are not the man you claim to be." Mark tried to bluster. "I do not know what you are talking about," he said, trying to sound offended. "I am your son-in-law. I love your daughter." "Do you?" my father asked, his voice dangerously soft. "Do you love her? Or do you love her money? The money you so confidently claimed as your own at the altar." Mark's jaw dropped. He looked at me, his eyes wide with shock and betrayal. He finally understood. I had told them. "You," he whispered, his voice shaking with rage. "You told him." "You told me yourself," I said, my voice clear and steady. "You told me at the altar. You told me in your emails to your mother. You told me when you lied about your past. You have been telling me the truth about who you are for a very long time. I just finally decided to listen." My father slid a thick file folder across the table toward Mark. "This is a report from a private investigator," he said. "We have been looking into you for months, Mark, ever since you first proposed to my daughter. I had my doubts. You seemed a little too perfect." Mark stared at the folder as if it were a snake. He did not open it. "We know everything," my father continued, his voice relentless. "We know about your debts. We know you have never owned a business. We know there is no David Chen. We know that you and your mother here have been planning this for over a year. It is all in the report, along with copies of your emails." He nodded to the woman in the suit. "This is a detective from the fraud division," my father said. "It seems that you used falsified financial documents to secure loans in the past. That is a felony, and your attempts to gain access to my company's proprietary information could be considered corporate espionage." Mark looked like he was going to be sick. He turned to his mother. "Mom, say something," he pleaded. "Tell them it is a misunderstanding." Janice finally looked up. Her face was streaked with tears. She looked at my father. "I am so sorry," she whispered. "He told me it was just a loan. He said you would help us. I did not know he was going to do all this. She was trying to save herself. She was throwing her own son under the bus. Mark stared at her, his face a mask of disbelief. You are lying, he hissed. It was your idea. You told me I deserved a better life. You helped me plan everything. That is enough, my father said, his voice cutting through the argument. He turned his attention back to Mark. You have two choices. Choice 1, we hand this entire file over to the district attorney. You will be prosecuted for fraud, and I will personally fund the best legal team in the country to make sure you spend a very, very long time in prison. Your mother may also face charges as an accomplice. He let that sink in. Mark was breathing heavily, his face pale and sweaty. Choice 2, my father said, his voice dropping even lower. You sign this. He slid another document across the table. This is an annulment agreement. It states that you entered into this marriage fraudulently, with the sole intention of financial gain. You will agree to an immediate and uncontested annulment. You will walk out of this building with nothing but the clothes on your back. You will never contact me, my daughter, or anyone in my family ever again. If you do, the deal is off, and we proceed with choice 1. In return for your signature and your permanent disappearance, we will not press criminal charges. Mark stared at the papers. He looked defeated, broken. The smug, confident man I had married was gone. In his place was a pathetic, cornered rat. He had lost, and he knew it. He looked at me one last time. His eyes were filled with a venomous hatred. You think you are so clever, he spat. No, I said calmly. I just think you are not. You underestimated us. You thought we were just a bank account. You did not realize we were a family, and we protect our own. He looked from me to my father. He saw the cold, unyielding resolve in our eyes. He knew there was no way out. He picked up the pen. His hand was shaking so much he could barely hold it. He signed the papers. He signed away our marriage. He signed away his fantasy life. He signed away his future. As soon as he was done, the 2 security guards stepped forward. Sir, one of them said, it is time for you to leave. They escorted him out of the room. He did not look back. His mother, Janice, was also escorted out by the detective, who informed her she would be needed for further questioning as a witness. And then they were gone. The room was silent. It was over. My father turned to me. He reached out and took my hand. I am so sorry you had to go through that, sweetheart, he said, his voice filled with a deep sadness. I am okay, Dad, I said, and I was surprised to find that it was true. I felt clean. I felt like a poison had been drained from my life. Thank you for protecting me, for having a plan. Always, he said, squeezing my hand. I told you we would handle it. Our lawyer cleared his throat. The annulment will be filed first thing in the morning, he said. It will be as if this marriage never happened. And that is what it felt like. A bad dream. A nightmare that I had finally woken up from. I had walked into that church a naive, trusting girl. I had walked out a married woman. And now I was walking out of this boardroom as something else entirely. I was stronger. I was wiser. And I would never, ever let anyone underestimate me or my family again. Mark had wanted my family's money. In the end, all he got was a lesson. A very expensive lesson. And I got my life back. In the days that followed, the legal machine my father had set in motion worked quickly and quietly. The annulment was processed on the grounds of fraud, which meant in the eyes of the law, our marriage had never been valid. It was erased, wiped clean from the record. There were no messy divorce proceedings, no division of assets. There was nothing to divide. Mark had come with nothing, and he left with nothing. My father's legal team made sure of it. They sent a formal notice to the hotel where we had stayed after the wedding. ensuring he could not run up any more bills on my family's account. They canceled the credit card he had been so excited to get, the one linked to my account. I imagined his shock when he tried to buy something and was declined. The thought brought a small, cold smile to my face. I never saw Mark again. My father's security team made sure of that. They informed him that the restraining order was part of the agreement he signed. Any attempt to contact me would result in the immediate reinstatement of the criminal charges. He was a ghost, vanished from my life as quickly as he had appeared. I did hear about him, though. A few weeks later, a friend of a friend mentioned seeing him working as a waiter at a chain restaurant downtown. She said he looked tired and angry. The Ferrari he had been dreaming of was replaced by a bus pass. The mansion he was designing was replaced by a small, rented room in a bad part of town. He was back to where he started, only this time, he was burdened with the public humiliation of his failure. The story had not made the papers. My father had ensured our privacy was protected. But in the small, insular world of our city's elite, whispers traveled fast. Everyone knew he had tried to con us. Everyone knew he had failed. He was a social pariah. No one would trust him again. His mother, Janice, faced her own consequences. After her statement to the police, my father's lawyers made it clear that while they would not press charges against her, her association with our family was permanently over. She had been part of a charity committee with my mother for years. She was quietly asked to resign. The friends she had made through us suddenly stopped returning her calls. She had hitched her wagon to her son's sinking ship, and now she was going down with him. They had gambled everything on this one big score, and they had lost spectacularly. My life, on the other hand, began to return to normal, but it was a new kind of normal. I was different. The experience had changed me. I was more cautious, more observant. I no longer took people at face value, but I was not bitter. I was stronger. I had been tested, and I had not broken. I started spending more time at my father's company. I wanted to learn the business, to understand the empire he had built. I wanted to be able to protect it, to be a part of it. He was a willing teacher. He showed me everything, from the finances to the marketing strategies. He told me he was proud of how I had handled the situation with Mark. "You were calm under pressure," he said. "You have a good head for strategy. You are a natural." I found that I enjoyed it. I liked the challenge. I liked being in a world where things were clear, where success was measured in numbers and results, not in fake smiles and empty promises. I was not just the boss's daughter anymore. I was an active participant. I was earning my place. A few months later, my father and I were having dinner. It was a quiet evening, just the two of us. "You know," I said, "I have been meaning to ask you something. That day, at the wedding, your smile, you already knew everything, did you not? The PI report was already done." He nodded. "Yes," he said. "It came in the day before the wedding. I read it all. I knew exactly what he was." "Then why?" I asked, the question that had been lingering in the back of my mind for months. "Why did you let me walk down that aisle? Why put me through that, even for a moment?" He put down his fork and looked at me, his expression serious. "Because I needed you to see it for yourself," he said. "If I had just shown you the report, if I had told you to call off the wedding, you would have believed me. But there always would have been a small part of you that wondered, a part that might have thought he was just a man with a messy past, that he could have changed, that my disapproval was just a father being overprotective. You might have resented me for taking that choice away from you." He paused, then continued. "But when he whispered those words to you at the altar, in the one place that should have been sacred, he showed you his soul. He gave you the proof himself. There is no doubt now. There is no what if. You know, with absolute certainty, who he is. And you were the one who brought him down. I gave you the tools, but you did the work. You needed to feel that power, to know that you could face a monster and win. Now, no one will ever be able to fool you like that again." I understood then. It was a hard lesson, a painful lesson. But he was right. I would never be that naive girl again. He had not just protected his company. He had not just protected his daughter. He had armed her. He had given me a gift, wrapped in a nightmare, the gift of my own strength. The conversation lingered in my mind long after dinner. It replayed in my head as I fell asleep that night. My father had not just seen the threat that Mark posed, he had seen the potential for my own growth within that threat. He had orchestrated the entire affair not just to expel a predator, but to forge a stronger version of me. It was a chillingly calculated move, a testament to his strategic mind, and in a strange way, a profound act of fatherly love. He trusted me to handle the fire, knowing I would emerge from it refined, not consumed. The following weeks were filled with a quiet intensity. I threw myself into my work at the company. I started from the bottom in the marketing department, wanting to learn the ropes without any special treatment. My colleagues were wary at first, unsure of how to act around the boss's daughter who had just had a famously short and disastrous marriage. But I kept my head down. I worked hard. I brought ideas to the table. I stayed late. Slowly, the whispers died down, replaced by a quiet respect. I was not just a name. I was a contributor. One afternoon, my father called me into his office. He had that same calm, serious look on his face that he had in the boardroom. My heart skipped a beat. "What is it?" I asked. He slid a tablet across his desk to me. On the screen was a news article from a local business journal. The headline read, "Former social climber Mark, last name, arrested in check kiting scheme." I read the article. It detailed how Mark, desperate for money after his fall from grace, had gotten involved in a clumsy, amateurish fraud scheme. He had been caught trying to cash a series of bad checks. The amounts were not huge, a few $1,000s here and there, but it was a pattern of criminal behavior. He was facing serious charges. The article briefly mentioned his annulled marriage to the daughter of a prominent local CEO and described him as a disgraced figure. "He could not help himself," my father said, his voice flat. "Men like him, they do not learn. They do not change. They just find a new angle, a new scam. His greed is a compulsion. I knew he would do something like this eventually." "Did you have anything to do with this?" I asked, looking up at him. "Did you tip someone off?" He gave me a small, enigmatic smile, the same smile from the wedding. "Let's just say I have friends who keep an eye on things," he said. When we found out he was trying to defraud a small business owner, a man with a family, I felt it was our civic duty to make sure the proper authorities were alerted. He was given a chance to walk away clean. He chose not to take it. So that was the final move in the game. My father had not just cast him out, he had kept a watch on him, waiting for him to self-destruct. And when he did, my father had simply given him a final, decisive push over the edge. Mark was not just broke and humiliated anymore. He was a common criminal. He would go to prison. His name would be forever linked with petty crime, not with the high society he so desperately wanted to join. It was a complete and total annihilation. I looked at the mugshot in the article. The man in the picture was gaunt with dark circles under his eyes. The smug confidence was gone, replaced by a look of haggard desperation. He was unrecognizable. The charming man I thought I loved had never really existed. This was the real Mark. A hollow man, eaten from the inside out by his own envy and greed. I felt nothing. No pity. No anger. Just a quiet finality. The chapter was truly closed. I pushed the tablet back across the desk. "Good," I said. It was the only word that came to mind. Life moved on. The seasons changed. I grew into my role at the company. I was promoted based on merit, not my name. I bought my own apartment downtown, a place that was mine, filled with my things, with no ghosts of a past life. I made new friends, people who knew me for who I was, not who my father was. I dated, but cautiously. I was open, but not naive. I learned to trust my instincts. My father's lesson had been a harsh one, but it had served me well. I could spot a fake smile a mile away. I could hear the subtle dissonances in a story that did not quite add up. I was no longer an easy target. One day, about a year after the annulment, I was having lunch with my mother. She had been a quiet pillar of support through the whole ordeal, angry at Mark, but mostly worried about me. She had never fully understood the cold, calculated way my father and I had handled it. Her instincts were to protect and comfort, not to strategize and destroy. "I saw Janice the other day," my mother said, stirring her iced tea. "At the grocery store. She tried to hide behind a display of cereal, but I saw her." "What did you do?" I asked, curious. "I walked right up to her," my mother said, a hint of steel in her voice that reminded me of my father. I said hello. She looked terrified. She started to apologize, rambling about Mark and his mistakes. I held up my hand and stopped her. "What did you say?" I said, "Janice, your son is a criminal. You raised a criminal. You enabled him. The fact that you are not in prison alongside him is a gift. Do not ever speak to me or my daughter again." Then I walked away and finished my shopping. I was stunned. My gentle, kind mother. "Wow, Mom," I said. "I am impressed." She smiled, a sad, weary smile. "A mother bear will do anything to protect her cub," she said. "He hurt my baby. They both did. Forgiveness is for heaven. Here on earth, there are consequences." It was in that moment that I fully understood my family. We were not just wealthy. We were survivors. My father, with his strategic mind and ruthless protection. My mother, with her fierce, quiet loyalty. And me, the one who had been through the fire and learned to carry the flame. Mark and Janice had thought they were targeting a rich, soft family. They had no idea they were taking on a fortress. My father eventually started to step back from the day-to-day operations of the company, grooming me to take on more responsibility. He was preparing me for the future, for the day when I would be the one at the head of the table. The thought no longer scared me. I felt ready. I had proven to myself and to him that I had the strength and the intelligence to lead. The memory of Mark faded. He became a story I told myself, a reminder of a lesson learned. He was a footnote in the story of my life, not the main plot. His whisper at the altar, once a source of such profound shock and pain, was now just a distant echo. "Your family's money is finally mine." He had been so wrong. My family's money was one thing, but its strength, its loyalty, its resolve, that was something you could not buy, and you could not steal. It had to be earned. And it was something he would never, ever have. He thought he was marrying into a fortune. He never realized he was challenging a dynasty. And dynasties do not fall easily. He was just another foolish man who had tried and failed. And in the end, that was all he would ever be.